finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m, only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as net migration reaches its highest level since World War II, with a staggering 500,000 settling on our humble island over 12 months, when will the likes of Sunak and Starmer stop talking big and start taking action to prevent Britain bursting at the seams?
Government's policy and my policy is that we will want to reduce net migration over time.
The days when low pay and cheap labour are part of the British way on growth must end.
I'll break down those bombshell news stats and ask if the Tory party must set a net migration limit of tens of thousands in my digest next. Then I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel, Dominique Samuels, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Should Brits really be pressured to scale back on energy use to defeat Putin and save on energy bills, as demanded by Jeremy Hunt? That's our big debate at 10 p.m. After she claims discrimination in England pushed her into the clutches of ISIS, and a lefty pundit agrees a white girl wouldn't have been treated in the same way. Is Shamima Begum really a victim of racism?
Surrounded by, was there any racism or things?
That's why I said that I did not like my primary school, because I faced some racism.
Well, I'll be challenging that absolutely outrageous claim in the clash at 9:25. I want your verdict too. As the Chancellor is accused of trying to tie us, really, or get us back into the clutches of the EU with a Swiss-style deal, is it time the Brexit Party returned? One of its former MEPs, Anne Widdecombe, thinks there's a strong case to be made. She'll join me at 9:50. Is Meghan doing the monarchy a favour with her attention-seeking antics?
How on earth did I get here? I was the girl from Suits. Can we do? What can I do?
This woman, she's difficult.
My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, tackle that and ask if King Charles was right to express his sorrow for colonialism at 9:35. Plus, she's the star journalist who broke news of the palace row that saw Meghan reduce Kate to tears, spelling the beginning of the end for the Fab Four. Now Camilla Tominey, one of the most formidable columnists in Westminster, is becoming the face of weekend politics here on GB News. She sits down with me for her GBN debut at 10:20. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages and Greatest Britain Union Jackass on the way too. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. So you know how this works by now. My opinion in just a moment, but the news first at GBN. So here's the headlines at 9 with Bethany Elsey.
Dan, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says she's committed to reducing levels of migration as more than 500,000 enter the UK in the past year. The Office for National Statistics says 504,000 more people moved to the UK than left in the year to June. That's the highest level since the Second World War. Suella Braverman said the rise was driven by unprecedented world events, including the war in Ukraine and the end of lockdown restrictions. A 31-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 daughters following an arson attack on a flat in Nottinghamshire. 3-year-old Fatima and 1-year-old Naima died in a fire in their home in Clifton on Sunday morning. The mother, 28-year-old Fatoumata Hydra, was taken to hospital and put on life support, but she died on Tuesday. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing new allegations that he used his personal email and iPhone to intimidate staff. Dominic Raab is allegedly
professionally at all times.
Dominic Raab is allegedly facing an inquiry after 2 formal complaints were made. The Prime Minister says he still has full confidence in his deputy, and Mr Raab claims he always adheres to the ministerial code.
I behave professionally at all times, and I'm the one that when the complaint came in a matter of days ago, first that's ever come against me since I've been a minister since 2015, called for an independent inquiry, and I look forward to dealing with it fully.
The family of a 2-year-old boy who died after prolonged exposure to mould in his home have said they have no confidence in the leadership of the Housing Association. Awab Ishaq's parents made several complaints to the local authority but were simply told to paint over it. He died in December 2020. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says Rochdale Borough-wide Housing has failed to explain how it will ensure tenants' safety in the future. A Met police officer has now been charged with 53 offences after the CPS approved a further 9 charges against him. David Carrick served with the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command. His charges include 27 counts of rape and 9 counts of sexual assault, all relating to 13 women between 2003 and this year. He faces trial in February. And the leader of the RMT union has said talks with the Transport Secretary were positive, but he hasn't ruled out further industrial action. Mick Lynch warned the government that warm words aren't enough to bring a resolution. Thousands of rail workers are due to hold a fresh round of strikes over the festive period in a long-running dispute with Network Rail over pay. Meanwhile, though, in Scotland, RMT members have accepted a new pay offer by ScotRail. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News now. Let's get back to Dan.
$504,000 people, more than the entire population of Liverpool. So that's the net migration numbers arriving in the UK in the 12 months until June, in the midst of a cost of living crisis with record NHS waiting lists and pressure on our housing system like we haven't seen before. It's the highest level since World War II, twice the number predicted. And those figures, check this out, they don't even include the 40,000 plus who have already arrived illegally this year alone on small boats across the Channel as part of the invasion via our southern border. I don't need to tell you, this level of migration is completely unsustainable. It's also a betrayal of what we were promised when we voted for Brexit, in part to regain control of our borders and stop free movement. We were told the figure was meant to be reduced to as low as 100,000 a year after Brexit. So what the hell is going on? The government points to foreign students and the one-off humanitarian policy to take in Ukrainians and Hong Kongers. But that isn't the end of the story. For example, 130,000 work visas to Indian folk have been granted this year, with 98% of those who applied for a visa being granted one. 98%. That doesn't sound like an Australian points-based system to me. I've got to be honest with you, I'm angry about this now because once again, all we're being offered by our current Prime Minister, Fishy Rishi Sunak, and the likely next Prime Minister, Slippery Keir Starmer, is weasel words. Weasel words rather than a hard and fast commitment to reduce our level of migration.
Government's policy and my policy is that we will want to reduce net migration over time, but I don't want to. I'm not going to put an arbitrary number on it because I want to be honest with people. And I think right now our number one challenge is getting a grip of the number of illegal migrants coming, and that's the thing I want to focus on first. I think that's what, by the way, the British public rightly want us to focus on.
Our common goal must be to help the British economy off its immigration dependency, to start investing more in training workers who are already here. Migration is part of our national story. Always has been, always will be. But let me tell you, the days when low pay and cheap labour are part of the British way on growth must end.
Yeah, but the lack of any commitment to specific figures is pathetic. Because what choice do we have as the public when both major party leaders refuse to talk about hard and fast figures? Once again, the only senior cabinet minister who has been prepared to set a limit, in her mind at least, is the Home Secretary, Superwoman Suella Braverman, who wants the numbers down to the tens of thousands but has her hands tied.
Yes, I still stand by the Brexit promise and by our 2019 manifesto pledge to reduce overall numbers on migration. And that's my very, very firmly held view. And David Cameron famously said, tens of thousands, no ifs, no buts. So that would be my ultimate aspiration.
And again, she's right, but her hands are tied by Sunak and Hunt. Here's the thing, immigration could cost the Conservatives the next election on its own. And if they continue the Tyno, that's Tory in name-only approach, then that becomes a near certainty. Take the latest poll for Redfield and Wootton showing that Labour is beating the Sunak Conservatives in the Red Wall by 53% to 39%. So Braverman, she's in a difficult position, said today, we remain committed to reducing migration over time in line with our manifesto commitment. This level of migration has put pressure on accommodation and housing supply, health, education and other public services. We must ensure we have a sustainable, balanced and controlled approach, which is why we continue to keep our immigration policies under review. And the PM's spokesperson acknowledged our borders are broken. But how the hell will Sunak fix this national emergency without stopping the boats or pledging to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands? Rhetoric is no longer good enough. We need a plan. To respond now, my superstar panel. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Dominique Samuels, the point is talk is cheap. We've got the numbers here. 500,000. That is a population the size of Liverpool. We cannot cope. We're not coping with our population as it is.
At some point, I think we're going to have to ask whether or not our government does indeed have control over the numbers of people.
But they've admitted they don't.
That are coming here. But I think we have to look at this in a global sort of perspective, because it's not just here that this is happening. Obviously, our southern border's being invaded. In America, their southern borders being invaded. Nobody seems to want to do anything about it. Meanwhile, global organisations such as the IMF that said in 2020 that we're going to need more migrants to replace Britain's existing workforce. Nancy Pelosi, now out of the House in the US, has said that US farmers need more migrants to pick crops. There seems
So do you think this is part of the globalist agenda?
If it were a part of the globalist agenda, it does certainly seem to be working. And I think it's all part of this idea that we need to replace our population with migrants because people are not reproducing fast enough and we have an ageing population. The idea, though, that more migrants means more jobs, I think, in the light of these statistics, has actually been debunked because we have more job advertisements than ever, more job places that aren't being filled on the back of the highest migration we've seen since World War II. So the idea that migrants equals jobs, I think, is false.
It's not working. And Sean Bailey, what I don't understand about your party, the Conservatives, why not just institute the tens of thousands target before the next election? Just say it's coming into force. We've got to do this because at the end of the day, all of this talk from Sunak means nothing when we look at the numbers.
I think there's two things here. One is you pick an arbitrary target, you fail, and people don't believe that now. It's happened a lot. We were told tens of thousands many, many years ago. It's been in the hundreds of thousands ever since. So I don't know if that's one.
Yeah, but it's going up.
Yeah, listen,
that's the issue. It's going up now. It's not even coming down.
The two issues. The one thing that Rishi Sunak was right about is the separation between illegal immigration and immigration. It's going to need to do something about illegal migrants because it doesn't matter what you do.
But this doesn't even include the illegal figures.
That's my point.
I mean, you add the illegal figures and you're talking 540,000.
That's my point. You're going to have to fix that. But actually this will become a big election issue because down in the south, amongst the elites, it's always talked about as migration is good for the economy. It's good for the big economy. It's often not good for the economy of working people.
Well, yeah,
and now
it's not good for community.
And now people have far more experience of how it affects their economy badly. I think it could actually become an election issue. And we talk about the red wall seats, and Keir Starmer's intervention, I thought, was mealy-mouthed because, of course, he's led the Labour Party. That's always said
it is
open.
But this is the problem you've got, Sean, though, for the Tories. Keir Starmer can just position himself to the right in terms of rhetoric. He doesn't have to deliver anything. Of course, I don't trust Keir Starmer. He believed in open borders. I don't trust Keir Starmer to solve this.
But how comes he is the one that's saying that we can't rely on cheap labour whilst we're getting mumblings from Sunak's government that they're going to import more people?
Well, it's a clever political strategy, but it will work, and it will work.
Look, we've had it for years from the Labour Party who've said it doesn't affect us, and we all know it does. And actually, the other challenge the government has had, every move they've made, some outside or lefty organisation has taken them to court and they've lost. What they need to do now is establish something in the law that allows them to look at who is in the country, because it's becoming people's lived experience that they're losing to immigrants, and that makes people racist, and nobody wants that.
We know who's in the country. Overwhelmingly, a lot of students, which is a credit to our education system. I don't
think
students aren't going to stay here longer than 3 years, typically.
Well, no, there's an argument that actually a lot of students are coming in and doing really low-grade education courses and then staying.
And then because they can afford to pay it, universities are prioritising foreign students over UK-born students, and that is completely wrong, and it's not very patriotic. This idea that, you know, GDP and money, you know, is everything in this world, I think is what has led to this country's demise.
Amy, can I just ask on a macro level first? I just want to start on a macro level with you, because you've always been pretty pro-immigration, pro-open borders. So over 1 million people coming in the past year.
500,000.
Well, that's net migration because people are leaving too, but with over 1 million new people into the UK, I presume that's what you want. You think that's great. You want more, don't you?
Of course I think that's great. I don't understand why you're so angry about people who are coming here, contributing, putting in more than they're taking out. You can't say this.
We have the longest NHS waiting list in history. We have 400,000 Brits waiting over 12 months at the moment to be transferred.
That's exactly more vacancies in the NHS, which is why we need doctors, we need nurses to ease those waiting lists. Don't blame migration on the failings of this government.
The challenge to what you're saying, Amy, is the reality that we live in really, really serious housing crisis, especially in the southeast of the country.
Because we don't build enough houses.
We have a record level of job vacancies, so it doesn't look like people are filling it. And when people talk about migration, they often talk about the sort of professional end, which has always worked. If a company sponsors you to come here, that's one thing.
That is what the figures are referring to.
But the other end of migration, you put poor people in a tough
And do you know what? Can I just say, as a general point, we're cheapening what it means to be British.
No.
If you look at countries, Amy, I'll let you respond, but let me just make this point. If you look at companies like Australia or the United States of America, to gain access to the country, you have to prove that you are highly skilled, that you are doing a job that no American or Australian can do. It is an honour. You cannot tell me that 98% of the 130,000 Indian folk who applied to come in over the past 12 months, that every single one of them, that 98% of them added something to this economy.
One of the reasons that we are patriotic and we are proud to be British is that we are welcoming to migrants, and we celebrate diversity.
We are.
The people coming into the country with this massive figure are overwhelmingly students. They're the Ukrainians who are fleeing war, Afghans who are fleeing war, and people who are being repatriated from Hong Kong.
They're not the overwhelming majority.
That is the situation. It's also the fact that not as many people are leaving the country because of Brexit.
I didn't agree with that.
You were one of the few people who disagreed.
Yeah, because we simply do not have the infrastructure to be able to handle so many people coming here. And even if I took your logic, right, that we need to open the floodgates, whilst we do not have the infrastructure, maybe let's press the pause button.
I'm saying.
Amy, can I ask you, What number is too high for you? Because I think you are wanting
I can tell you a number that is too low. Tens of thousands, which is what the government has said.
What's your limit?
Let me clarify why.
Tell me what your limit is. How many people can we allow in?
We need these people to support our infrastructure. Tens of thousands.
Okay, if 2 million came, is that too much for you?
Less immigration. Let me finish the point. Would be a real national emergency. That's what you're talking about.
Not true.
A lower number would prove a national emergency. We need these people here.
There's over 1 million young people in this country who are NEET, not in education or training. We need to find them a positive future.
Let's get them jobs.
Let's get them into
and we don't do that
but here's the real thing about immigration.
Final word, Sean.
When you look at the big macro figures of immigration, yes, it works. But when you look at people's individual lives, why they don't get housed, why you're trapped in a 2-bed when you've got 4 kids, that's what makes the difference on the ground.
Or if you're waiting on an NHS waiting list for over 12 months,
It has nothing to do with migrants.
which 400,000 people currently are in this country. Amy, just final chance for you to answer. What's your top level?
That's not a
How
question.
many can we take?
Why
are you refusing to answer that?
Because all I know is that a lower number is going to cost the country more than a higher number.
OK. So you're happy for another million next year?
There are 2 million job vacancies in this country.
OK, so 2 million.
I am not going to sit here and get angry about human potential, which is something that I'm going to leave to you three.
OK. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Tomey is my superstar panel, and they're here all night. But still to come, Meghan's constant attention-seeking antics, actually a blessing for the monarchy. And is King Charles right to express his sorrow for colonialism? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, tackle those headlines and more at 9:35. But first, after she claims discrimination in England pushed her into the clutches of ISIS, is Shamima Begum really a victim of racism? Kevin Maguire goes head-to-head with Dr Akiba Hassan in the clash. Straight after the break, I want to know what you think, though. Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews. Our poll running there too. The results coming up straight after the break.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Time now for The Clash. Amid her appeal to have her UK citizenship restored, I last night brought you never-before-seen footage of former ISIS bride Shamima Begum outrageously claiming her experience of racism in a British school may have pushed her into the arms of the death cult.
Was it hard being was your faith hard around the area, or were you surrounded by, was there any racism or things?
So that's why I said that I did not like my primary school, because I faced like some racism there as well.
Did you? What, constantly?
Not constantly, but like at a young age, just one thing is enough to like...
Were there bullying? Did you get bullied?
Not bullied, but like just little comments and stuff, and like
Right.
favoritism with teachers to white kids over.
So you had
non-white
that
kids.
favouritism from white kids to you, so at that point you would say, and what sort of age were you then?
Like 7, 8.
Despite being classed as one of the least racist countries in Europe, Shamima's claims have seen left-wing pundits turn into extremists themselves in an altogether different sense. Speaking on the Jeremy Vine show, political commentator Marina Purkis made this extraordinary statement.
I just think if Shamima were a 15-year-old white girl with blue eyes who had been groomed in this way, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think that's completely wrong, because we stripped Jihadi Jack's citizenship and he was white. He was half Canadian, half British.
How old
we stripped his
How old was he?
I don't know how
She's
old
a
he
minor.
was.
Very good point, Emily Carver. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stand for liberal loudmouths trying to fashion an ISIS supporter into a victim of mythical bigots in the country she willingly betrayed. But what do you think? Is Shamima Begum really a victim of racism? And is that playing a role in her being denied a return to Britain? Let me know your views by emailing me at dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews. Our poll running there too. But duking it out tonight, I'm joined by Associate Editor for the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and Social Policy Analyst, Dr. Rakib Hassan. Now, Kevin Maguire, speaking of liberal loudmouths, you're surely not saying that Shamima Begum is a victim of racism, are you?
I think reasoned common sense. Of course she is. She is many things, not all of them good, but she has been a victim of racism, and she's a victim of racism now, one, in the government's response, and two, a lot of the public criticism of her. And if at the age of 15 she was vulnerable and she had been groomed, manipulated and turned into somebody who was going to be used by sex, but didn't go to Syria, but went to Sunderland or Stirling or Swansea or somewhere else, and she was blue-eyed, blonde and white, there would not be the degree of hostility there is to her now.
Well, how do you explain Jihadi
British.
Jack? How do you explain Jihadi Jack? Who had his, he was a dual British-Canadian citizen. He had his British citizenship revoked in the same way that Begum did. He's never allowed to return here, and he was white.
Dan,
he was white. He was white, Kevin. It made no difference.
You will know, if you've looked at the figures, the number of people who've lost their citizenship, had it revoked. It's something like 350 over a 4-year period. But as the Institute of Race Relations say, the majority are Muslim. She was born in Britain. She was born in London. She was born not very far from where I am living now. She is British. You cannot just take a passport away and say she isn't our problem anymore. She is our problem.
Well, you can.
And when she comes back, she has to be dealt with. She has to be tried. She has to be investigated. There's no question of that, but she is
Kevin,
British.
because she has Bangladeshi parents, and if she wants, she can go and apply for citizenship of Bangladesh. She doesn't want to do that because she'd probably be treated very badly when she arrived here. And Kevin, you know, if she re-entered this country, she would be back on the streets of Bethnal Green within a year, and that is unacceptable.
Dan, you don't know, and I don't know. But what we do know about Bangladesh is, 1, she's never been there. 2, she hasn't got a Bangladeshi passport. 3, the Bangladeshis say they won't give her one. And 4, the Bangladeshis say they won't help her at all. She's not Bangladeshi. She is British. She might have Bangladeshi heritage through her parents. She is British. She is our problem, and we have to deal with her.
Dr. Akib Hassan, is there any racism towards Shamima Begum, a woman who ran off to join a death cult that loved to blow up Brits?
Well, I'd make the point, Dan. I think that irrespective of one's racial background or ethnic heritage, if they join a genocidal terrorist organisation which is prescribed in the UK, I think the vast majority of British people will be hostile towards them. I think in terms of Shamima Begum's personal identity, as you've already mentioned, Jack Lett, he was stripped of his citizenship. At the time, he was a UK, Canada dual national, a white man who left his family home in Oxford to allegedly join Islamic State in Syria back in 2014. So I would have to question those accusations of racism. I think there is a tendency among some people to view a range of issues through the prism of race. I think in terms of the citizenship stripping, I'd make the point that Bangladesh have actually suggested that she may even face the death penalty, because there's extremely harsh penalties in Bangladesh when it comes to Islamist extremism. So the one thing I would say, Dan, I don't think that citizenship stripping is a long-term strategy when dealing with these kind of cases. What I'd like to see is a modernisation of our treason laws, where you see very strong penalties for those who are found guilty of joining and being a member of a prescribed terrorist organisation.
I think that's a great idea, because the problem is, Kevin Maguire, if Shamima Begum, if the lefty liberal lawyers and the lefty justice system allows Shamima Begum back, she will not face a lengthy prison sentence. The authorities have already said it's virtually impossible to try her for her despicable actions in Syria because they are unable to collect evidence. So she would be out on the streets very quickly. And Kevin, what sort of message does that send to other young folk in the UK who might be thinking of defecting to a terrorist organisation? It sends a message of, if it all goes wrong, we can come back.
And Dan, Conservative right-wingers like David Davis, the former Brexit secretary, on principle says she should be allowed back.
I know he does.
We have to deal with her too. There was no
but
question.
I disagree.
There's probably three to 400 people who went to join ISIS are thought to be back now and have come to none of getting the hostility she is getting. I think some of it is also because she is a woman. I'm not denying there is a problem. I'm not denying that she will have done some wrong, but she was age 15. She was groomed. She was manipulated. She was taken for sex. She was married off to an older fighter. And yes, she found it exciting at the time.
No,
that's what
Kevin,
happens with people who
you're
are groomed,
stating that
whether
as
they're
fact.
groomed individually or by gangs. But you have to deal with it. Now, if I went off and joined some terrible death cult, and ISIS is a terrible, theocratic, medieval, awful cult, I couldn't have my passport removed. She's had her passport removed because she has Bangladeshi heritage.
Kevin,
and that is where
I just
the
want to pull you
racism
up, Kevin.
comes in.
I just want to pull you up, Kevin, on the fact that you are now stating as fact what her lawyers are saying regarding sex trafficking. We had Mr. Jury on last night, who is the journalist that knows Shamima Begum best, has been interviewing her for the past 2 years. She's never mentioned sex trafficking to him once. He says she was incredibly determined. She did it all herself. There was no trafficking going on. So I think you've got to be very careful with these claims coming from Begum.
Well, I think you've got to be very careful about who knows her best, and she's given different views to other people. But she was taken at 15. She was groomed online. She went with two other friends. They are both believed dead now. She was married off. If it had happened in this country, the person she was married to or the people who arranged it would have been in court themselves. Come on, Dan. You can be against her, You can raise genuine concerns, but you've got to realise
this woman should never step foot in this country again. No, she is a traitor. She expressed no remorse for the Manchester Arena bombings, which killed an 8-year-old girl and 21 other Brits when she was a member of that death cult. I'm sorry, Kevin. I do not want this traitor to step foot in the UK again. Ever.
Dan, you're quite right. In one interview, she said, well, the Manchester Arena bombing, it was kind of, well,
she changed
to
her
us,
view.
we do that to them. It's killing in a war. And then she later said she was dumb for saying that. And she said from the bottom of her heart, she regretted what she'd said. And
well, if you believe that, Kevin Maguire, you still believe in Santa Claus. Final word to you, Rakib Hussain.
You're not telling me he doesn't exist, are you?
No, I'm certainly not.
Dan, you've ruined Christmas for a lot of people watching now. You've just ruined Christmas.
I'm certainly not saying that if any kids are watching. Rakib Hussain, final word to you.
I just make the point that we should be a little bit careful in terms of stripping Shamima Begum of all personal agency. A lot of people have used her age as a defence, that she was 15 years of age when she joined Islamic State. I'd make the point that the age of criminal responsibility in England and Wales, I believe, is 10. So she was actually comfortably above that. I think that when we're looking at these, there's these suggestions by her legal team that she may have been a victim of sexual trafficking. I'd really make the point that I think that's actually quite disrespectful towards many of the victims of sexual slavery, especially many Yazidi women who were locked in sexual slavery under Islamic State's barbaric regime. And I think we really should think about them when we're discussing this particular story.
We very much should. Social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Hussain, associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. Thank you both. So who do you agree with? Was Shamima Begum a victim of racism? Kojak says no. It's a diabolical liberty that the lefties defend Begum, the terrorist sympathiser who pledged allegiance to a terrorist organisation. From Dean, she will try anything to get back here and will probably end up making a lot of money out of it all. This country needs to toughen up. And Lewis on email says it would have made no difference, white, black or brown. What she did was wrong, no matter the skin colour. This is about morals. And your verdict is now in. Just 8% of you agree with Kevin Maguire that Shamima has been a victim of racism. 92% of you with Rakib Hussain saying she has not. Coming up, as the Chancellor is accused of trying to chain us back to the EU, is it time the Brexit Party returned? One of its former MEPs, Anne Widdecombe, thinks there's a strong case to be made. She lays it out at 9:50. But next is Meghan actually doing the monarchy a favour with her attention-seeking antics. My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, weigh in on that and more headlines pestering the palace straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip
of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Now, Meghan Markle has perfected the art of blitzing us with insufferable content in her desperate bid to stay in the public eye. And this week has been one of her best. On Monday, it was revealed the Duchess and hapless hubby Harry will accept a prestigious award for taking a stand against structural racism in the monarchy based on their unproven claims to Oprah last year. Then on Tuesday, her Flop podcast gave us a crude lecture on slut shaming. But while the Duchess of Woke thinks she's gradually tearing down the institution she loathes, she may in fact be doing just the opposite. As Times columnist David Aronovich writes, it's not impossible in hard times to resent the monarchy's high living. Instead, however, we can argue about Meghan and Harry and whether they are awful people. Hating on Meghan is safe republicanism. We should thank her for her service. Well, boy, she has been putting in a shift. If that's the case, let's take a look at Meghan at her, shall I say, most helpful.
I don't really think that tea with the chickens is what we have in mind. Everyone just like, oh my God, you're so lucky he chose you. But thankfully I have a partner who was countering that narrative for me and going, they've got it all wrong. I'm the lucky one because you chose me. How on earth did I get here? There I was the girl from Suits. Proof that I was there. What can I do to make it better? This woman, oh, she's difficult. It's really a code word for the B word.
I'm joined now by my royal masterminds, esteemed royal authors, best-selling authors both too, Phil Dampier and Lady Colin Campbell. So, Lady C, did you agree with this column from David Aronovich that actually Meghan might be providing such a service to the monarchy because we're actually seeing how brilliant they are, especially this week, in contrast to her, quite frankly, embarrassing behaviour?
Well, I've actually been saying for some time now that Meghan and Harry, by being so badly behaved, provide an absolute foil for the well-behaved members of the family. And in doing so, they bring attention to the good behaviour of the others, which might otherwise be ignored. Because, you know, good behaviour is not something that grabs people's notice, while bad behaviour is. And then if you have the foil of good behaviour, it highlights both the bad behaviour and the good behaviour. What I do think, though, is that despite the fact that Meghan and Harry are a perfect foil, and in some ways it's drawing good attention to the family, I think also not all publicity is good publicity. And I think we need to bear that in mind, because I think Meghan and Harry are also undermining the monarchy in that many people are, at least complaining to me in their thousands, why can't the royal family stop the bad behavior? And people don't seem to understand that Harry and Meghan also have human rights, and the royal family is limited as to how it can actually stop disloyal, traitorous members, also defamatory members of their family.
No, indeed. And of course they do have freedom of speech. But Phil Damper, I think what's been so fascinating this week is seeing the contrast. So you've got Meghan talking about sluts with her Californian friends on a podcast which is flopping in the charts now because it's so boring no one wants to listen to it. By contrast, you have Kate looking like just the picture-perfect future queen at a state event where she can actually play a role on the international stage.
Yeah, that's right. Good evening, Dan. I mean, the King's, it's been a fantastic transition, hasn't it? A very smooth transition for King Charles. As you say, he's very popular. The Princess of Wales, very popular. And that's what it was all about. State visits of the South African president the other night. That's really seeing the monarchy in action. And the more that Meghan and Harry complain and explain what they're doing, it's the complete opposite to the Queen's mantra of never complain, never explain. The more you look at them, the less you like them, you know. And I think even their popularity in the States is plummeting. So I think David Aronovich, I'm not a great fan of his actually, but I think he's got a very good point.
Yeah, I'm not usually a fan either, but he does here. You're right. They're not never complain, never explain. They're always complain, always explain. Now, look, ladies, see, earlier this week, King Charles welcomed the President of South Africa in the first state visit since the Queen died, and the new monarch used the historic occasion to tackle colonialism, declaring, while there are elements of that history which provoke profound sorrow, it is essential that we seek to understand them. As I said to Commonwealth leaders earlier this year, we must acknowledge the wrongs which have shaped our past if we are to unlock the power of our common future. But, Lady C, is Charles right to admit shame in our history to save the Commonwealth, or is he actually opening a Pandora's box that could end up really harming the Crown?
I think his comments could have been slightly more balanced. You know, he should have said, yes, there are things that we should put our hands up about, but also there are things that we should be proud of. Remember, the British Empire was the first of the empires to abolish slavery. The last country to abolish slavery, which was in 1981, was the African country of Mauritania. Long after we had abolished slavery, all the other European countries and empires had slavery. Brazil was the last of the European empires to get rid of slavery in 1888, after which there was systematic slavery in the African and the Middle Eastern, in some of the Middle Eastern states. You know, slavery was an international fact of life from the beginning of civilization until the dawn of the 20th century. And yes, I think the King is absolutely right to say that we did commit errors and we did do wrong, but it needs to be placed in its proper context. Everyone else did worse for longer, and we should not be accepting the cudgels of guilt beyond that which we should be responsible for. And he's running the danger of actually playing into the hands of racist critics who would like the world to believe that black people were the only ones who were enslaved. In fact, 14 million white people were enslaved in Africa, while only 12 million black people were enslaved in the Americas. So if you look at it like that, you know, I'm not saying that we should not admit to what we were guilty of, but I think we should not do a mea culpa beyond that which we are guilty for. And his speech was in danger of doing it. He's almost pandering to racism.
Or claims, or exactly, or false claims of racism, which is exactly, by the way, what Meghan and Harry have tried to put out there. And Phil Dampier, I think Lady C has a point, because the self-flagellation misses the point that actually the British Empire helped end slavery internationally and really was did it far sooner than virtually every other civilization.
It doesn't surprise me, Dan, that he's made these comments. I mean, he made similar comments about regretting slavery when he was in Barbados or handing over the other year. I think the trouble with all this, if you do take it too far, it tends to let the nations today, not in the past, off the hook, some of which haven't got very good human rights. There's 50 countries in the Commonwealth, some of whom have got rather dodgy records, and it takes the emphasis off them, and we end up with the absurd situation where they're asking for reparations for the Industrial Revolution for 200 years ago, instead of dealing with the problems of today. So that's the problem. If you overdo it, it takes the heat off people trying to solve things today, I think.
No, couldn't agree more. And, you know, we don't want to play into the hands of the critics of the royal family who are trying to make race a central issue. And I just worry that Charles, because we know he's a little bit woke, he just shouldn't buy into it too much. But look, that's how esteemed royal masterminds for another week. Phil Dampier, Lady Colin Campbell, thank you so much, and we will speak again next week. But coming up, should Brits really be pressured to scale back on energy use to defeat Putin and save on energy bills, as demanded by high-tax Jeremy Hunt? My superstar panel return for the Media Buzz at 10. We'll have the first of the newspaper front pages then too. But before that, is the risk to post-EU Britain now so great we need to bring back the Brexit Party? One of its former MEPs, Anne Widdecombe, joins me to put her case straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Anne Widdecombe is tonight's outsider. Now, Britain's, GB News' actually very own Brexit foot soldier, Nigel Farage, confirmed today that a full slate of Reform UK candidates will be standing at the next general election. And he ruled out any deal with the Tories, whose globalist leaders seem hell-bent on returning us to the controls of Brussels. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Farage said the Conservative Party needs to understand just how many people in this country now believe that it is the problem and not the solution. Public trust has been frittered away. So Farage is dead right that the electorate needs a political alternative they can trust on Brexit, with Chancellor Jeremy High-Tax Hunt seemingly wanting to return the UK to the single market. Some folk are struggling to trust the Tories ahead of the next election on our ties to the EU. So could the answer lie instead with a revamped Brexit party whose dominance in the 2019 European elections, claiming 29 of the 72 seats in Strasbourg, served as a wake-up call to the EU and Remoaners alike? Well, one political figure who thinks there is a case is Anne Widdecombe. She's the former Tory minister, of course, who quit the Conservatives to join the Brexit party, where she served as an MEP until we officially left the EU in January 2020. So, Anne Widdecombe, do you think with Hunt, who is, let's be honest, seemingly running the show at the moment, wanting to take us back into the single market at least, that there might be a need for the Brexit party again?
Well, if that was really what he wanted to do, then I would say yes, unhesitatingly. But I think what we've got to ask ourselves is, what was that leak about Swiss-style arrangements all about? And I think they were flying a kite. And they wanted to see if Britain was so oppressed by the current economic mess, which is nearly all due to COVID and Ukraine, not to Brexit, whether Britain was so oppressed by that that they were willing to consider new relations with the EU, which would actually mean accepting EU law. Now, that is what I think they were about. They got a very, very fierce reaction. The mere threat of reconstituting the Brexit party, I think, would send tremors through them, because even if they thought we weren't going to win a single seat, they know that we could do them an awful lot of damage. But just look at the facts. That budget that Hunt produced was very, very anti-Brexit to this extent. But what we should be doing as a result of Brexit is attracting investors into Britain, competing with the EU, abolishing all the regulations that they inflicted on us, actually making full use of freedom. We haven't done any of that. And what Hunt actually did was to turn us into a high-tax economy that nobody, frankly, would want to come over here and invest in and live in, because everything just goes back in tax. I mean, if you take the obvious one, they did maintain the abolition of the cap on bankers' bonuses. What use is that if you're going to tax said bonus into the ground? You know,
I know.
Absolutely.
But Anne, this is why it's such a concern, though, because I haven't forgotten what Hunt said after the biggest democratic mandate in British history. He said we should consider a second referendum, and then he said we should consider a Norway Plus deal that would have tied us entirely to the EU and stopped any form of Brexit freedom. He hasn't even properly denied, Anne, that he wasn't behind the Sunday Times story at the weekend. So I don't trust the guy as far as I can throw him.
Well, it may have been him, it may have been his civil servants, it may have been his political aides, but that leak came from somewhere. It didn't descend from the heavens. It came from Whitehall somewhere, and it had a purpose, as I say. And
well, I think
any
it came
relationship
from him,
with the
Anne.
EU, which means taking their law, any relationship that means taking their law, any relationship which means that we accept intervention from the ECJ, and one of the purposes of Brexit was to get rid of the European Court of Justice. Any of those, totally unacceptable.
No, I know. Oh, well, Anne, I'm very worried. The good news is, Anne, is we're all loving your new haircut.
Oh, dear. It's a little bit severe at the moment. It always is when I've just had it done. But it grows very, very quickly, which is why I take it very, very short when I do have it cut. It'll be down to my nose in a couple of weeks.
Well, it is a good look. We'll celebrate the positive, Anne, because there's no positive news coming on Brexit, that is for sure. Our resident political firebrand, Anne Whittaker, we will speak next week, Anne. But coming up, she's the star journalist who broke news of the palace row that saw Meghan reduce Kate to tears, spelling the beginning of the end for the Fab Four. Now Camilla Tominey, one of the most formidable columnists in Westminster, is becoming the face of weekend politics here on GB News. She sits down with me for her GBN debut at 10:20. But first, should Brits really be pressured to scale back on energy use to defeat Putin and save on energy bills, as demanded by that man again, High Tax Hunt? My superstar panel return after the break to debate that and more. We're back in just 2 minutes' time, so don't go anywhere.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, in the latest tic-tac from the globalist faction running the Tory party, Chancellor High Tax Hunt has demanded cold and shivering Brits curb our energy use this winter to defeat Putin. I'll ask my superstar panel next if it's wrong for the government to put the onus on us regular folks struggling through the cost of lockdown crisis. Tonight, I'm joined by Dominic Samuels, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Does the SNP's attempt to describe Scotland as a colony comparable to Kosovo show the danger and derangement of their independence push? And are they legitimising extremist anti-English views in their quest to break up the union now? That's our big debate at 10:30. After handing the win to Rishi Sunak, will Boris Johnson ever run for Prime Minister again? The man himself was going to break his silence. Plus, I'll bring you more of the stories going viral today, plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages in the media buzz throughout the next hour. And with just 3 days until the final, why is it vital that Matt Hancock must not win? I'm a Celebrity social media sensation and self-professed chief gammon. June Slater hits out at the Hancock Honeys, who've fallen hard for the disgraced health secretary. Can't believe that. What do you see in him? She's uncancelled at 10:45, and she's the star journalist who broke news of the palace row that saw Meghan reduce Kate to tears. And remember, Meghan hit out about it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Now, Camilla Tominey, one of the most formidable journalists in Westminster, is becoming the face of weekend politics on GB News, but she's going to make her debut here in 20 minutes' time. And I'll crown the final greatest Britain and Union jackass of the week at 10:50, so do stay up with us. But before all of that, the news with Bethany Elsey.
Hello there, good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says she's committed to reducing levels of migration as more than 500,000 enter the UK in the past year. The Office for National Statistics says 504,000 more people moved to the UK than left in the year to June. That's the highest level since the Second World War. Suella Braverman said the rise was driven by unprecedented world events, including the war in Ukraine and the end of lockdown restrictions. A 31-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 daughters following an arson attack on a flat in Nottinghamshire. 3-year-old Fatima and 1-year-old Naima died in the fire at their home in Clifton on Sunday morning. Their 28-year-old mother was taken to hospital and put on life support, but she died on Tuesday. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing new allegations that he used his personal email and iPhone to intimidate staff. Dominic Raab is already facing an inquiry after 2 formal complaints were made against him regarding bullying allegations. The Prime Minister says he still has full confidence in his deputy, and Mr Raab claims he always adheres to the ministerial code.
I behave professionally at all times, and I'm the one that when the complaint came in a matter of days ago, first that's ever come against me since I've been a minister since 2015, called for an independent inquiry, and I look forward to dealing with it fully.
Over 10 times more people are in hospital with flu than this time last year. NHS England figures show there was an average of 344 patients per day in hospital with flu last week, compared to just 31 in the beginning of December last year. The head of the NHS Confederation says it comes as 360,000 staff were off sick in the past week, compounding what he described as already severe staffing shortages. Much of Ukraine is without power for a second day after the most damaging Russian airstrikes on its energy grid since the war began. Ukrainian authorities have set up pop-up centres where people can charge their phones and get hot drinks. Despite the blackout, doctors at a hospital in Kiev were forced to use a torch so surgeons could perform open heart surgery. The latest airstrikes have killed 10 people and shut down all of Ukraine's nuclear power plants for the first time in 40 years. And the leader of the RMT union has said talks with the Transport Secretary were positive, but he hasn't ruled out further industrial action. Mick Lynch warned the government that warm words aren't enough to bring a resolution. Thousands of rail workers are due to hold a fresh round of strikes over the festive period in a long-running dispute with Network Rail over pay. Meanwhile, in Scotland, RMT members have accepted a new pay offer by ScotRail. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now, let's get back to Dan.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. First front pages are in. The Metro looks ahead to England's World Cup game against the USA tomorrow with 30 million pints expected to be drunk across the country. I'll be having a couple of them. Britain, that is, by the way, not Qatar. The Friday night clash is expected to bring a much-needed £300 million boost to the struggling hospitality sector as people go to the pubs to watch the game. The Eye reports that a crackdown on student visas is set to spark a major row in the Cabinet. Home Secretary Suella Braverman determined to act with plans to cut the number of foreign students in the UK for low-quality degrees. Once again, Superwoman Suella Braverman has got it right. My superstar panel back with me now, political commentator Dominique Samuels, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, arguably the most powerful man in the country who nobody voted for is back again with yet more demands of the British public. Not content with torpedoing a low-tax future with his autumn statement, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, high-tax Hunt as I call him, now says cold and skint Brits should use even less energy to help defeat Vladimir Putin and reduce bills. After all, billions of taxpayers' cash and a huge supply of weapons and technology for Ukraine just isn't enough, is it?
For most people, we need you to play your part in reducing our energy dependency on what Putin chooses to do in Ukraine, and that's why we've got this national ambition to reduce energy consumption by 15%. We're trying to help people to help themselves. We're giving them a cushion this year and next, but we do need people to change their behaviour.
Demanding people use less energy to reduce spiralling bills is like asking a starving person to eat less. It doesn't fix the problem at source. Dominic Samuels, I know you've had real concerns about the impact of the war in Ukraine on British people. How do you feel about Jeremy Hunt making this call to action?
I think Jeremy Hunt is a typical slimy politician because they love a good war, because it helps them shirk responsibility. But at the end of the day, there are a range of factors that have led to people's stark rise in their energy bills, lockdowns, quantitative easing, and now compounded by our funding, really, of a long war in Ukraine. And my wish for all of this, while we're talking about how British people are going to have to make sacrifices and difficult choices, I've got an easy one for you, Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak. How about we start actually pursuing diplomacy in Ukraine instead of committing further billions and more weapons that are going to run out eventually while the rest of us freeze and starve? That should be a pretty easy decision, but it seems the globalists don't really want that to happen. They're committed to a long war in Ukraine, which will negatively affect all of us.
Amy Nicole, how did you feel about this statement from High Tax Hunt?
Well, I want to put a positive spin on it, OK? Right, it's only 15% of energy consumption. That's not completely out of reach for most people. Plus, it will limit emissions so we can be more climate friendly. And I think
Dominique's not happy
oh my
with
God,
that.
this, because you are literally reading from their script. It's like
I
the
have to
same
say,
sort of COVID brainwashing. Let's change all our behaviour so people can do what we want you to
That's an
do.
absolutely massive jump. It's like
It's
use your
not.
tumble dryer at different times of the day.
But Amy, do you not think that this is a slippery slope? Because I don't want government, by the way, especially a Conservative government that is meant to believe in personal responsibility, to tell me how much energy I use. Rack off. Keep out of my life.
But I think this is going to continue whilst we depend on energy in the way we do. If we want to really have control over our energy, then we want to make it on our own terms.
Yes, frack. And more nuclear. But we're not doing that.
We could
even hydro.
Here's the crux.
Insulate houses, that would be a start.
First and foremostly, if we're reliant on Russian gas, that's actually the government's fault, not our fault.
Correct.
We cannot choose where that gas comes from. What they should have done, both Conservative and Labour governments, is build nuclear power stations.
Well, I wanted it to come from this country.
Then we would have had control of our own power. That's one. The second thing, to say to people they could save some energy would have been good, yeah? But his assumption is we're all at home burning the energy because we like it. We use the energy we use because we need to, and it costs a lot of money, so we're not doing it for fun. So I think he needs to adjust the message slightly. Yeah. And the last thing I'd say is we've already done our bit of to help Ukraine. The public of this country have paid millions to help Ukraine.
Sean, we should want to send more.
And we'll continue to do that. But he can't sit there and say we need to do more.
But Dominique's not happy to keep doing it, Sean.
Well, I personally, I'm happy to keep supporting Ukraine because I don't like the way Russia has comported itself.
I don't like the way Russia has conducted itself, but I'm looking at this in sort of as an objective viewer instead of viewing it with emotion. Look, I know that Russia is clearly the aggressor here. All I'm saying is, what would you rather? Your people starve and freeze at home, or actually try and pursue a diplomatic outcome?
Those are not the options at all on the table here. We can help Ukraine and we can solve the energy crisis.
We cannot help Ukraine. We cannot help
this
Ukraine
government solving of this energy crisis is what we're really
I have to agree with Amy and disagree. We can help Ukraine,
No, we can't.
we can continue to help Ukraine for a long time. And hold on.
I'm sorry. No, the facts actually don't back that up about helping Ukraine for a long time. In terms of the weapons supply, in the US in particular, they're fast depleting their weapons supply.
But we've given them enough.
In the US, they've already committed 68 billion, and Biden's asking for 37 billion more.
You're making an assumption that we have to keep supporting them at this level. No, we've given them weapons. Now we'll probably have to give them ammo to keep them going. Of course, it's his job to ask for more. But let's be clear. If you're talking about pursuing a diplomatic route with Russia, the first thing you have to explain to Russia, you have to demonstrate to Russians they can't win the war because they think they can win the war. You're dealing with a very different set of negotiations.
But they can win the war.
Well, they're getting their tails kicked at this
They're not
point.
at the moment.
Yes,
that's why all of Ukraine doesn't have power.
Yeah, and that's why Russia's economy is under huge stress.
Well, no, they're not.
The outcomes for these two countries
their
will be
economy
different.
factually is not under huge stress the way it is for us. Because if you look at how strong their currency is performing compared to ours, they're actually doing a lot.
It's interestingly the only country though that is going to perform worse than us in Europe next year.
And a strong currency,
On what basis though? Because, for example, their energy prices have gone down, and also their consumer prices have gone down. Meanwhile, ours are all going up, so they can afford to actually have an economy that's hard to hit if prices are down.
I just don't think that this conversation needs to take an ugly turn about whether we give enough or don't to Ukraine. We just need to rewind a little bit. The government aren't going to help us pay our energy bills after
In the meantime, telling us it's for Ukraine.
Maybe we could save a bit of energy.
Yeah. But do you know what? The last person who I need lecturing me about how much energy to use is High Tax Hunt, who has just absolutely obliterated lots of wealth in this country, has put up everyone's taxes. It's not up to him to tell us how we heat our homes, because in reality, we all know how expensive it is now.
That's right.
We are all deeply aware of the terrible financial situation and the path, the low growth plan
So does that
Hunt
mean
has taken
you're
us
gonna
down.
go-
And I don't want to hear it from him.
You're going to go with
I don't
Keir
want to
then.
hear it
We're
from
going
him.
to go with Keir. Bigger windfall tax, great British energy. Sorted.
Of course I'm not. Of course I'm not. As I said earlier this week, I feel politically homeless.
Yeah, we need a
Haven't Shell said they're going to re-examine investment, though?
Yeah,
I swear they've said that.
Shell have said that they are going to re-examine their £28 billion worth of investment in the UK because of the windfall tax. Surprise, surprise.
But didn't they
Liz
say they
Truss
welcomed the
was
bill?
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Surprise, surprise, Liz Truss was right.
Yeah.
And finally, it's the age-old question that Boris Johnson will never be able to avoid. Could he return as Prime Minister? So Bojo used trademark flowery language to skirt the question during a sit-down interview.
We don't want you.
What are you going to do next? I've always said that, I've said for about 20 years, that my chances of becoming Prime Minister were about as good as my chances of being decapitated by a frisbee or blinded by a champagne cork or locked in a disused fridge or something, or I can't remember, I had various other things. I then did become Prime Minister, so my chance of becoming Prime Minister again, I think those impossibilia cubed or squared.
Non-denial. So the hapless Tories who stupidly ousted him months ago will be keeping their fingers crossed yet. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, do stand by, because coming up, were the SNP wrong to paint Westminster as imperial overlords and claim that Scotland is an impressed country, a colony? I mean, they're even starting to compare Scotland to Kosovo now. That's how mad scheming surgeon has gone. My superstar panel return to debate that in the Media Buzz Part 2 at 10:30. We'll have more newspaper front pages delivered then too. But first, she's the journalist who broke the news of Harry and Meghan's relationship and the palace row that saw Kate reduced to tears. Now Camilla Tominey, the Daily Telegraph's associate editor, is set to host her very own politics show on this channel. She makes her debut straight after the break.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. My next guest is one of the most accomplished journalists in the UK, the woman whose world exclusive revealing how Meghan reduced Kate to tears prior to the royal wedding marked the beginning of the end for the Fab Four and sparked a public riposte from the Duchess of Woke to Oprah Winfrey. As associate editor of the Daily Telegraph, she's also a formidable presence in Westminster. No cabinet minister can afford to get on the wrong side of her, and she speaks truth to power like nobody else.
What specifically and exactly are you going to do to bring bills down? And I'm not talking about tax cuts in 2 years' time. I'm talking about immediate relief and help for families. Now, you are proposing a sort of reboot of furlough, but for energy bills. And how much is it going to cost? And isn't that in turn going to be inflationary? You're running a business in this country and you're looking at Rishi Sunak as Chancellor and you're saying, hang on a minute, he's put up my national insurance contribution, so I'm doubly taxed. Hang on a minute, he's putting up corporation tax. What incentive do I have to run a small business in this country?
Very good point. And now, as she prepares to become the face of weekend politics here on GB News, I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Camilla Tominey. And here's some news. Host of the Camilla Tominey Show, launching Sunday the 8th of January and airing from 9:30 a.m. till 11 a.m. So, Camilla, welcome to the GB News family.
I'm glad to see I look so prescient in that hustings, ribbing Rishi Sunak about coming out with socialist policies economically, and it's proved to be true, I think.
Well, yeah, at the time, we all thought he was never going to be Prime Minister.
Exactly so. So there you have it, yes. Liz had a good outing in that hustings. Yes, so a new punchy politics show, which I think is what we need, Dan. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't want this sort of staid, boring, it's always the same old questions, you know, the hosts are in it for gotcha moments and it can be rather biased in the wrong direction. So what we're trying to do is have a politics show with some personality, really, that people can engage with, that they can participate in. I think so often, actually, broadcasters leave the audience out completely, don't even realise who they are half the time. This is the People's Channel, so we should be channeling that whole thing and just hoping to get big-name guests and keep people entertained from 9:30 to 11 on Sundays.
Well, look, I love that because you're going for it. I mean, that's head-to-head with the BBC and Sly News. You're going for them.
Sly News, you're so funny. Yes, we are going to go head-to-head. To be fair, we'll give people a little bit of a lie-in. They're going to be watching before me and watching after me, because I think Portillo is going to come on afterwards. So, look, there's a full gamut of entertainment and informed news on a Sunday morning on GB News. But I think what we want to do is shake it up a bit. That's what this channel's all about. It's about giving people an alternative. It's about giving people the chance to participate. It's about giving people the chance to watch a politics show where they aren't trying to throw stuff at the telly because they're getting irritated by the direction of travel of some of the questions. I actually think that broadcasting in recent times have been too much about the presenter and too much about, I'm here to land a blow because I want to be the next Jeremy Paxman. And actually, we've got a cost of living crisis on, we've got migration out of control, we've got Tory members and voters completely disillusioned. We've got people who don't feel that Brexit's been fulfilled. So when we're going to be grilling these ministers, I think we need to be asking them those kind of questions.
Exactly.
Having them explain themselves.
Because that aforementioned broadcast, which I won't name again, earlier tonight had an interview with the Chancellor, High Tax Hunt, I call him now, Jeremy, and they were trying to do a gotcha on him for him to apologise for the Liz Truss budget. And I just thought, that's irrelevant now.
No. I would like to say to Jeremy Hunt, look, why has this become so left-leaning? Have you been taken hostage by the Treasury? Why is it that if you are running a small or medium-sized business in this country, you feel completely scuppered? You know, and actually, how much is this all going to cost? And isn't it a huge political gamble to put off some of these spending cuts until 2025? Because I know they're doing it because they want to saddle Labour, who, by the way, not a very good vote of confidence in themselves. They want to saddle Labour with this idea that they're going to take power at a time of crisis and cuts. But at the same time, what does it say about conservatism? I think people watching this show and beyond are looking at the Conservatives and saying, I just don't know what you stand for anymore.
Well, we feel politically homeless.
Of course.
Feel totally politically homeless. I mean, how does it work for you, Camilla? Because, of course, you've got your day job at the Daily Telegraph where you're one of their star columnists, and you do often hold the politicians and the Tory politicians' feet to the fire. But at the same time, you have these relationships with them, you want them on the show. How do you balance that criticism of them, which at times can be strident, while also needing to have these relationships?
Well, I think we always need to put the viewer at the heart of everything we're asking. I mean, there's no point in having somebody on and just being rude to them, and that's the approach of some other channels. And almost like the opening question is a disguised version of saying, why are you so rubbish? We don't need that. We just need to elicit answers for the people who are watching, for the people of Britain, right? With regard to my day job, I mean, I'm doing a full-time job on the Telegraph, but that means that I'm up close and personal with these people all the time, spend most of my week in Westminster, also covering the Royals, which is going to be a big story.
Well, we have to talk about
particularly next year, yes.
We have to talk about the Royals because both of us do have this interesting double life, don't we? And especially when Harry and Meghan were in the UK, part of the royal family, it exploded really into the biggest story of the world. You broke the fact that these two were even dating.
Yes.
At the time, no one in this country had heard of Meghan Markle, genuinely, until I picked up your story, which at the time was on the front page of the Sunday Express, before you moved to the Telegraph. I was literally like, who is this
Well,
woman?
I hadn't heard of her until I heard her name, and then I Googled her, and I think I found the image of her from Deal or No Deal that she's now denounced. And I was like, my God, my instant reaction was, goodness me, Prince Harry's punching above his weight, you know. It was the idea that she was this glamorous American. And so, that front page, I think October 2016 it must have been, then kind of exploded around the world, and now we're here. But the biggest story of the next year is the coronation, but of course, closely followed or maybe even superseded by Spare, Prince Harry's book. The book and the documentary to come before Christmas, we think, so.
So, let's just go back to that time when they were in the royal family. You were the person who broke this highly contested, very controversial story.
Well, only contested by one person,
by one
to be
side,
fair.
claiming that Meghan had made Kate cry during the dress fitting, right? It was the kids' dress fitting before
there was a
the
problem
wedding.
with the bridesmaid dresses, I think.
Now, this became such a bone of contention in terms of Meghan's relationship with the royal family that in her Oprah Winfrey interview, she revealed that she had had a huge bust-up because she wanted to go public and deny your story.
Yeah.
Now, you have always stood by it.
Yes.
It has since been confirmed by numerous people that Kate did feel that she was made to cry by Meghan, but how did you feel with that story exploding into such a big moment, I guess,
I know,
the relationship between Meghan and the royal family?
I mean, it was obviously an interesting story. To be fair, it was a line in a quite nuanced feature about how both couples were getting on, and it wasn't a one-sided piece saying, oh, Meghan's done everything wrong and the Cambridges, as they were known at the time, have done everything right. It was just talking about friction between these two couples, which obviously proved to be quite prescient. I was then watching the Oprah interview and in the middle of the night, our time, to write it out for the Telegraph, thinking initially when she had said about the Archbishop of Canterbury marrying them 3 days early, oh, that's a good line, you know, take a note of that. I didn't know that my story would be at the centre of this controversy. But, yeah, of course I stand by it, because...
So Meghan did make Kate cry, because, of course, what Meghan says is actually Kate made her cry and Kate apologised later for doing that. But Prince William, we know, is furious with that suggestion.
Yes. Look, I wasn't physically there to see any apology or Meghan's own tears. I think there was reports suggesting that Kate had turned up with a bunch of flowers and a door had been slammed. But, of course, I stand by my story. I wouldn't have written it if it wasn't true. Also, I found it interesting, you know, the story had run for, I think it had been around for 22 months. I've worked with the royals and gone on royal tours with Prince Harry since 2005.
Do you like him?
Yes, I do. I always used to get on really well with him.
So what's happened?
Well, you tell me, Dan, I don't know.
What? Because he seems to have a visceral hatred now of the media.
He's always had a visceral hatred of the media. Look, he used to have good days and bad days on tours. Sometimes you would do a job with him and he'd be like, Camilla, come, you know, get closer, you need to listen to this, you need to hear this, get your notebook out. And then at other times it would be like, you know, I don't know why any of you are here, go to the back of the plane type thing. So, it's a shame
Meghan?
what's happened.
Do you like
we never
her?
got introduced to Meghan, because when Kate came onto the scene, when they got engaged, we were all invited to, I think it was St James's Palace, to meet her on the day of the engagement. And I remember meeting her and she showed me the ring. I was like, my goodness. She was like, it was William's mother's, so it's very special. I was like, yeah, know something, Sherlock. But we never really got introduced to Meghan.
No.
Maybe that was part of the breakdown of the relationship between the media and actually Harry and Meghan. But there was this sense to which he always had a bit of a bee in his bonnet about playing second fiddle. You know as well as I do that people have blamed Meghan solely for Megxit. And the truth of the matter is that he was uncomfortable in his role and he was often raging against the machine. And he was often saying, you know, you keep on telling me no, why don't you just say yes? And I always say what happened was Meghan came along and gave this rocket fuel, but it was there in the first place.
Totally. I'm actually never one of these people that always blames Meghan solely. I think Harry has been equally behind every
And he's
decision.
a grown-up. I mean, it's his family that
yeah.
he's disenfranchised from.
Absolutely, but I think she has played on certain vulnerabilities,
Maybe, yes.
shall we say. But look, Camilla Tominey, thank you so much. Your debut here on GB News. So what date? What date does it
8th
start?
of January, Sunday the 8th of January, tune in from 9:30.
9:30 till 11 a.m. on GB News. Well, it's going to be a big moment for us as a channel, so it's great to have you here. Thank you so much. But coming up, why is it so important that Matt Hancock doesn't win I'm a Celebrity? Social media star. She's our self-professed chief gammon. June Slater will give her take on the Hancock Honeys, responsible for letting the Health Secretary off the hook. She's uncancelled at 10:45. But first, does the SNP's attempt to describe Scotland as a colony comparable to Kosovo illustrate the craziness of their push for independence? My superstar panel debate that. We'll have more of the newspaper front pages, hot off the press too. That's in the Media Buzz straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing. You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news site now in our Media Buzz. Lots of front pages in. The Daily Star brands tomorrow bunk off Friday with England football fans set to leave work early, down 30 million pints and spend £200 million on party food as the Three Lions take on the USA. The Daily Telegraph reports that ousted PMs Boris Johnson and Liz Truss have teamed up to form a rebellion. Oh, this is exciting. A rebellion against their successor, Fishy Rishi, by demanding an end to the onshore wind farm ban. The Guardian reports that MPs are calling for an investigation into PPE contracts following revelations that Conservative PM Michelle Mone had links to a PPE company. Mone and her husband say they had no involvement in the company. PPE, MedPro and no role in the process, through which the company was awarded its government contracts. PPE, MedPro denied it was awarded contracts because of company or personal connections. But this is a big story. The Sun, and an exclusive from a friend of mine, actually, Ellie Henman, reporting that David Walliams has quit Britain's Got Talent after offensive remarks he made about contestants were leaked. Walliams, who later apologised, had been a judge on the show for a decade. My superstar panel back with you now, Dominic Samuel, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole. Amy Nicole, this is really interesting, isn't it? Because I think this is definitely one of those cases where he jumped before he was pushed, because ITV is such a weak broadcaster. The moment that there is some form of controversy around one of their stars, we look at Jeremy Kyle, Piers Morgan, they just say bye-bye. And it's like, actually, stand by your people, stand by your stars. Or do you disagree?
No, I don't know. I think there might be other stories to come.
What do you think, Sean? David Walliams?
I think they use it as contract negotiations. This is their way out, isn't it? This is their cheapest way out, and it means the next person they negotiate in, they can change the process.
I just don't like this whole witch hunt that's going on at the moment, Dominique. I mean, David Walliams, he's a single man. He made these comments on stage.
I don't know what he said, though.
So he made some inappropriate comments on stage about contestants. Some were a bit sexually explicit. I think another was about an old man. But he was off camera.
You wouldn't have said those things on or off camera. None of us would.
So we can't do banter anymore.
I don't think that type of banter is what you want from, like, a family favourite.
I think we are living in a culture
That's
where
not banter, by the way.
we all have to
tread on eggshells, especially for ITV.
Well, it's cancel culture.
Can I just say,
the ultimate
sorry, about the Boris Johnson thing, your comeback is being based on onshore wind farms, OK? Can this be the example that people need to finally realise this guy is off his rocker? Like, please.
It's not that sexy, but I think, look, Sunak has to be challenged at the moment.
But
and I think the idea
farms,
of Truss and Boris teaming up, that's just the start. That's just the start. I don't think that's necessarily the most important issue.
It really isn't, but he seems to believe it is.
Last night, the SNP and its supporters reacted furiously to the Supreme Court decision to smash Scheming Sturgeon's fanciful second independence referendum claim. Sparsely populated rallies were held around Scotland as the party and its languishing leader, a single-issue politician fighting to keep her career alive, tried to galvanise the cause's dwindling support. But predictably, after years of legitimising extremist anti-English views in their quest to break up the union, Sturgeon's mob were amped up and a few confronted the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross outside an Edinburgh rally last night. Watch.
The thing is, we can have a debate, we can be reasonable about it. I'm going to disagree with you on independence. Yes, we have it during a referendum. Well, why don't you allow it? You stand up and get a straight back. Well, take it to the box. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're scared to take it. You're a democracy denier. Yeah, you are a democracy denier. Yeah, so you and your red coat, your red Labour. Have a good night. And, you know, we can please don't patronise us. Have a good night today. To get 32 pages, everyone.
I mean, it's no surprise to me that the deranged and destructive quest for Indie Ref 2 now resembles an extremist issue. After all, the central tenet of the SNP's legal argument for a second independence referendum is, in 9 years, was the unhinged suggestion that Scotland is an oppressed colony comparable to war-torn Kosovo. Thankfully, Britain's top judges demolished that ridiculous notion, decisively dismissed the SNP claim that Holyrood could legally hold its own advisory referendum. But Sean Bailey, I think this is now becoming actually seriously concerning, isn't it? It's like Scheming Sturgeon is running some type of cult. Look at how those folk were acting.
For me, this shows that Nicola Sturgeon is beyond the pale. She's not even a serious politician anymore. She's some kind of crazy activist. And the idea that Scotland is some oppressed colony, this is a place that we send billions of pounds to Scotland. Their economy is effectively ours, is so intertwined with ours. We send their children to university for free while we pay for our own. I'm sorry, it's just not oppressed at all.
But by the way, 9 years ago, they voted conclusively to stay with us, and to stay with the UK, and they were all told at the time by Sturgeon herself this was a once-in-a-generation and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
And that's the important thing. There's two important things here. One, it's a once-in-a-generation. I don't know about you, but 9 years doesn't feel like a generation.
It's not a generation.
And also, all of the arguments for why we shouldn't leave the EU, according to the Scots, are the same reasons they want to leave us. It doesn't make sense.
The inconsistency.
And you have a kooky thing. They want to leave us and then join the EU. I don't understand. Where's the independence coming from if they're joining the EU? What I think it is a cover for Nicola Sturgeon's absolutely poor performance.
Well, it's a cult. It's a cult. But Amy Nicol, you say that actually the Scots are victims. How and why?
Because the union is clearly no longer a voluntary union.
That's they had a vote.
According to who? The Supreme Court has ruled that they cannot have another referendum.
They had a vote 8 years ago.
Every single time the SNP are voted into Holyrood, you're going to have the same problem because it's part of their mandate to have a call for independence.
It's part of Nicola Sturgeon's relevance.
No, it's not. It's part. I know it must. I know it's probably quite surprising to have politicians that actually want to stick to their mandate when we're talking about.
No, she's an opportunist.
Yeah, she's an opportunist. She and the Scottish people were given a vote, and the Scottish people
once in a generation. Once in a lifetime. And Amy, you must concede, Amy, that it is very dangerous to have significant constitutional referendums that are promised once in a generation, once in a lifetime, every 8 or 9 years until you get the result that you want. That is not how democracy works. Imagine if there were political leaders in this country saying, and I think this could happen soon, by the way, saying there should be another referendum on Brexit. It would tear the country apart.
It would, and we're actually the consistent ones, right? Because we were saying that there can't be another referendum on Brexit, like a lot of the people that support a referendum for Scottish independence do, and we also don't want another referendum when it comes to Scottish
I think that
independence.
it is true that it is really divisive, and I hate to see this division anywhere. But at the moment, particularly as the voters, as the younger people in Scotland get older and they want to vote, there is more of a demand for independence, and it's not going to go away. And it's especially not going to go away. It would be anti-democratic to not push this through, because this is part of why you vote SNP.
What would be anti-democratic is to hold another referendum. When that referendum was granted, it was said not for another generation. And this is 9 years is not a generation by anybody's count. So it'd be anti-democratic to go against what those people voted for. Those people of Scotland voted for.
But then again, I think just with Amy there, if there was sort of an overwhelming sentiment amongst
by whose measurement though? By whose
no,
measurement?
if there was, if polling consistently showed that there was, then I would be.
Dominique,
can you just finish? I would be partly sympathetic to it. But what I'm trying to say is that there doesn't seem to be that overwhelming appetite for it in Scotland.
50% want a referendum.
No.
30% don't. 16% are
No, that's not true. Do you know where I think Dominique has a fair point? Is, look, if I was seeing polling, and it would have to be consistent, and it would have to be
years.
Absolutely. It would have to be over a period of, I would say, over 3 years, where over 70% of Scots wanted independence. I think there would be at least some sort of case to say there has been a fundamental sea
wanted a referendum, not.
But they're voting for a referendum every time the SNP win the election.
No, they're not, Amy.
I'll give you.
Sturgeon herself at the last election said that she wanted all political stripes to vote for her to get through the COVID crisis. So you're being disingenuous. And
you're being disingenuous
by the way, she's had to be propped up by the extremist Greens in order to achieve a majority.
And Dan, here's the other thing as well. Yes. Yeah. She needs to be careful, because what she might stoke inadvertently is English nationalism. There's a voice in England who will start to say, OK, if you're so busy to leave us, we want you to go.
Yeah,
and that will rip the country apart.
Totally.
You don't need that.
And by the way, we'll keep our money. We'll keep our 40 billion.
Like George Osborne
and by the way, I never want to go down that path, because I think it's so important that Scotland stays part of the Union. But I understand what you're saying.
But George Osborne said it. If you leave with your share of the national debt.
Totally. Now, the Spectator Parliamentarian of the Year Awards were held last night, and it was a spectacularly tone-deaf gathering of Westminster insiders and self-absorbed politicians. I hope you weren't there, Sean. Hosted at the plush five-star Rosewood Hotel in Covent Garden, it was actually an orgy of deluded self-congratulation, where throwing the country into turmoil was merely a punchline to selfish ministers, including high-tax Hunt and fishy Rishi Sunak, who seem to think everything that's gone on the past few months, and this makes me really angry, actually, is just all some sort of game. Listen.
Thank you and the team for this unexpected honour, which I must say I need to dedicate to my fantastic team, my friends, my family, and, of course, the UK bond markets.
And to those Conservative MPs who didn't vote for me in the leadership contest, I told you you'd pay for it, and I've just put up your taxes. Now, as Chancellor, I'm going to have to cancel our family skiing holiday to Switzerland, because it'd be the perfect splash for the Sunday Times. Some have said it's not that much of an honour to be Chancellor these days, because everyone gets a go.
None of that is actually funny. It shows you how these folk live in this odd Westminster bubble. Because let me just say, undemocratically ousting 2 prime ministers, ploughing through 4 chancellors during a time of great economic and social turmoil is not a joke. It just confirms what we already knew. These Westminster elites just don't give a damn about folk like you and me when they're quaffing champagne with Andrew Neil. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, do stand by, because coming up, how on earth did fashion brand... Oh, my God, I don't know how to say it. Balenciaga, is that right? I'm not cool. Think bondage teddy bears would be an appropriate way to flog their clobber. More on that as I crown today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, social media sensation and self-professed Chief Gammon, June Slater, on why Matt Hancock absolutely cannot win I'm a Celebrity. She's uncancelled to give her take on the Hancock honeys who've fallen for the disgraced health secretary. Straight after the break, we're back in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
It's time for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, I know we all love an underdog, but I beg of you, stop voting for Matt Hancock to win I'm a Celebrity. The disgraced former Health Secretary's entry into the jungle was met with widespread condemnation from the world of politics to his poor West Sussex constituents who have been left high and dry as he munched kangaroo testicles down under. But somehow the narcissistic delusionist who took glee in denying us all of our God-given freedoms for over a year has managed to go through an unbelievable redemption arc after squeezing out a few crocodile tears on the show and pleading for forgiveness. After radio DJ Chris Moyles was ousted tonight, he's now in the final 5 and just 3 days away from victory. But don't be fooled by him, folks. Because here's the thing, if he's crowned king of the jungle, it'll make a mockery of the reckoning he must face for his lockdown love and his care home's catastrophe. Now, social media sensation, self-professed Chief Gammon, June Slater joins me now. June, I can't believe I'm even saying this. I mean, he may have lost the Tory whip, but apparently, June, he's won the hearts of women across the country. Who are these so-called Hancock honeys crushing on Matt Hancock after everything he's done to us, June?
Well, you've got to remember there are women who write to serial killers. Ted Bundy had a fan club, so I suppose Matt Hancock's allowed one. What gets me with this fella is, you know, just like a typical panicking government, and that's what we suffered from, panic. Lockdown, and he locked the care homes down. Some people were sent into care homes from the hospitals that didn't come from care homes. They came from their own homes. And some of those people were never seen again because they died there. There were 29,000 extra care home deaths in those 2 years. And such an abysmal decision to send all these fit people, fit apart from what they'd had done in hospital, to care homes, creating an almost petri dish of infection with ideal surroundings, locked windows, closed doors, cramped conditions, care workers without sufficient PPE. The disease went rampant. And I truly believe in my own heart that some of those deaths could have been avoided with better decision-making. 29,000, it's a lot of people.
No, June, here's the thing. Thousands of those deaths could have been avoided. And what the problem is, June, is because he knew how badly he mucked up at the start of the pandemic, he then overcompensated and turned into the lockdowner in chief. and said disgusting things that have impacted folks' mental health, like telling young people you're going to kill your granny. And the problem I have, June, and the reason why I'm so disgusted with ITV, actually, for allowing him to pump out his propaganda is I'm not saying Matt Hancock should be cancelled forevermore, but what I'm saying is that he should be questioned as a failed health secretary who caused the deaths of tens of thousands of people. He should have to justify that. Instead, June, he is now going to be questioned by most of the British public as a celebrity. And that's just wrong.
On every level. He's not a celebrity. He's supposed to be a working politician.
But he is now. That's the problem, June.
Away from his job for a fee that would take a nurse 10 years to get in her wage packet. There's something obscene about it. And when I see people saying, oh, Matt's great, oh, I really love him, I can't believe how attractive he is. I think they should be sent immediately for counselling, because how you can find a man who can actually think it's acceptable to be in charge of care homes all our lives, people cancelling weddings because of his tier system where you were fined, or even weddings cancelled because your relatives lived in Yorkshire and you lived in Lancashire and you couldn't cross over. Ridiculous stuff. So many ridiculous rules that he broke while he's groping Gina's arse at work, good and hard, tonguing her, swapping saliva. I mean, I wouldn't swap saliva with Matt Hancock if my life depended on it. I'd rather suck on a leech.
Yeah, when he was banning young people, June, from having sex with their partner who they didn't live with. This is the issue. It's the fact that he got involved in all of our lives.
Oh, yeah, his Mr. Wiggly stayed fully active, didn't he? I mean, he was allowed to be rampant, probably up and down like a little periscope, passing around Westminster.
Oh, June, no, too much. June Slater, you've put quite an image in my head tonight that I never wanted to have. Self-professed Chief Gammon, former Brexit campaigner. We will speak next week, June. Thank you very much. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return, Dominique Samuels. Who is your nominee for tonight's Greatest Britain?
Mine is former UK Minister Gareth Johnson for saying that Just Stop Oil should be designated a terrorist organisation.
Yes!
And I completely agree with him.
I've been saying it for the past year. Finally, an MP's had the balls to say the same thing. Let's have a listen.
Will the Prime Minister, therefore, consider making Just Stop Oil a prescribed organisation so that they can be treated as the criminal organisation they actually are?
Yes, Gareth. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is Lads Needs Dads, a community organisation that's set up to give training and support to young boys who are missing their father. There's many great charities in this country, and this is one of the best. They're a really good bunch.
Amy Nicole, your nominee.
Mine's FIFA. No, they're baddies. it's like going the wrong way around. Alex Scott for wearing the One Love armband.
Oh, wearing an armband.
Sorry. Amy, are you serious? This is a woman who had no problem going to Dubai and posing in her bikini when homosexuality is illegal in that country too, and also had no problem posing for photos with Vladimir Putin. So is she really someone who should take the moral high ground?
I think wearing the armband in the circumstances in Qatar was hugely courageous.
Well done to you, Alex, for wearing an armband. Really?
I'm going to go with Gareth Johnson, though. I have been saying on this show for the past 12 months, Just Stop Oil are a terrorist, eco-terrorist organisation. You can prove it in the law. Finally, someone had the balls to say it at Westminster.
You must have been in some absolutely awful traffic jams to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, a lot of people have.
Oh, Amy, Amy, I can run it all. I'll show you after the show. Dominique Samuels, your Union Jackass nominee, please.
Mine is fashion brand Balenciaga.
Oh, you can say it. Sorry, I'd never actually heard it said out loud.
I don't know how. Where have you been? But upon their launch of upon the launch of their 2023 campaign, they saw fit to model what look like BDSM teddy bears for adults using children, amongst other things, very disturbing things that reference child pornography. They've been forced to apologise.
My Union Jackass is Sadiq Khan for his...
Get over it!
Disingenuous idea that he saved people from his bus cut.
Your old rival.
This is This is a new low. He proposed the bus cuts, he U-turned on them, and we're meant to thank him for that. This is a new disingenuous low.
And Amy Nicole, you sort of gave the game away.
It's FIFA.
Yeah, you gave the game away.
FIFA for showing their regard for the LGBT rights, human rights, by banning the One Love armband.
Well, Amy, I don't think Sean should get over it, so I'm going to go with Sean and Sadiq Khan as today's Union Jackass, because Sean has a very good point, and my goodness, our capital city would be in a much better place if Sean Bailey was currently Mayor of London. Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, Amy Nicole, my superstar panel, thank you so much, and thank you for your company tonight. I'll be back on Monday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Next up, though, it's Headliners. I know they've got a very good show planned. Have an amazing weekend. I'll see you Monday night. Good night.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel.